So welcome everybody, thank you. If my colleagues could continue to admit anybody else that's running a little bit late into the room, we're only 2 minutes late. Welcome everybody, this is the second in our series of innovation workshops on look and overlay, and I'm joined by Lise from the IOC, Jill from 11th Hour Racing, and Indra, who works with us at the Ocean Race, and I'm Megan, as it says there on the screen. So yeah, we're really happy that everybody's here joining us to look specifically at the issue of textiles circularity, and we've got some fantastic speakers joining us today to give us an update on where textiles circularity is at. But I would like to hand over to Lise, and she can give you a bit of a background of the journey that we've been on the last couple of years with this topic.
Good afternoon and welcome to all of you on behalf of the IOC. It's great to see so many of you in this workshop today. For those of you who don't know me, I work in the IOC sustainability team in Lausanne in Switzerland. So at the IOC, we started to take a closer look at the topic of look and signage back in 2019. And since then, we have been working in collaboration with other event organizers to develop a knowledge basis and to try to influence some positive changes in terms of sustainability in this area. As many of you already know, we worked with UEFA and the Ocean Race to produce a study on the environmental impact of look and signage materials, which was published at the beginning of this year, and which was followed by some guidelines to help you make more sustainable choices. So now we have a good knowledge basis, we have some common guidelines. It's time to put all this into practice and to share the lessons learned from our experiments. And in terms of experiments and future ambitions for the Olympics, today you will hear about the recent banner recycling project for the Tokyo Games, and you'll also hear about circularity ambitions for Paris 2024. We also have the pleasure to have representatives from Milano 2026, the Winter Games, who are just starting their sustainability journey. And now we'll hand back to Megan to explain the objectives and the agenda of the workshop.
Thank you. I'm going to share my screen now. Forgive me while it goes slightly clunky at the beginning. We all are used to this, aren't we? Very good. Today we're going to try and ultimately come up with some common metrics, language and targets for our sector's approach to circularity of textiles. We know that there's a load of work to do in look and overlay and signage. So look and overlay is the way we describe the dressing, the branding, the signage of our event spaces. So quite often we'll take over a venue or a space, and then of course we dress this space with a lot of what we call look and overlay. We've done a lot of deep dive work into this topic, and we've identified three key strategies: reduction, circularity and innovation. And innovation, we're of course looking at innovative materials, systems and alternatives to not having physical signage, of course, and that feeds into the reduction pillar. But right now and today we're focusing on circularity specifically, and also obviously textiles. So some of the previous work that Lise mentioned, we did this sort of deep dive landscape analysis, and there's links in the calendar invite which you can access to have a look at that, and also through the IOC and UEFA as well as ourselves, these amazing guidelines have been produced as well. Now, one of the things that we realized is that we actually have no clue how much textiles and look and overlay generally contributes to our waste footprint and our single-use plastic specifically footprint. And so we've done some surveys through LinkedIn and various survey forms, and ultimately only 18% of respondents told us that they had an idea of how much the look and overlay and single-use plastic footprint comes from textiles and other materials. So we know that we've got a long way to go, and we know that we can't manage unless we measure, and so that will form part of today's session. So we have this plenary now. We'll have 3 sessions. Lise, myself and Jill will be talking to some fantastic people. We will then have a break for 10 minutes. We've got a video to show you, a couple of videos. Hopefully we'll have sound by then, or you can go and have a little break, a walk outside and a cup of tea. And then we'll go into the workshop where we're going to look, as I said, at the common vision, language and metrics, and then we'll regroup for final thoughts. So today we've got, I won't read all of the names out, but you can read them there. We've got these 3 sessions. So we're going to look at, firstly, what is the state of the nation in terms of textile circularity? So we'll hear from some people that are really working deeply in this topic. Then we're going to have a look at testing circularity in events, and really these are kind of like small circles, little test labs. So it'll be really great to hear where we're at there. And then, of course, what's on the horizon. So knowing what events maybe the big events that are coming up are going to be looking at in the future. Quick snapshot. I apologize if you're not on this screen, but that's a pretty impressive list of attendees. We won't have time to go around the room, but the facilitator, when we go into the breakout rooms, will ask you to introduce yourself and give a bit of background into the chat. And then, of course, when you get to speak, reintroduce yourself then. But we'll gather all of the information from this workshop as well and redistribute it. So thank you very much. Now I would like to ask our technology person, people, to bring our first guests onto the screen, which is Cindy Rhodes, Petra Swagger, and Mauro Scalia. And goodbye to Indra and Lise. Fantastic. Here we go. Petra and Mauro will join us very soon, but welcome, Cindy. We're going to start with you, I guess, to give us a big old overview on textiles and circularity, because we know as the sports sector we can't solve circularity. The textiles sector needs to solve circularity, but we need to know what's going on and how we can participate in that. So if you could give us your elevator pitch and tell us, where things are at. You obviously did the World Circular Textiles Day recently, so we're looking forward to hearing from you on that.
That's right. Thanks so much, Megan. Can you hear me okay? Good stuff. So hello, everyone. Welcome to the day. My name's Cindy Rhodes, and I'm the founder of Worn Again Technologies. Today, I'm wearing my World Circular Textiles Day hat. And as Megan was saying, we set this up in 2020. It's a day that's launched every year, October 8th. And World Circular Textiles Day was co-founded together with Center for Circular Design in London and Circle Economy in Amsterdam. And we've developed a vision for full textile circularity. So a bit of background here, a quick introduction to WCTD. So the idea for the day came about because we felt there was a real need to celebrate and recognize all the people, the companies, the organizations, all committed and dedicated to making circularity a reality. And it's also an opportunity to stop and take stock every year to see where we're at. We also predicted that based on where we're at as an industry today, that full circularity is going to take a good 30 years, from 2020 when we launched to 2050. So this was our starting point. We wanted to imagine the end point, where we're trying to get to full circularity, so that we could imagine collectively as an industry, what's the big goal we're working towards. And to define this vision for textile circularity, we started by breaking it down into 3 separate themes. And we engaged some of our early signatories in helping to shape and draft the 3 pillars of circularity, which you can see here. So I won't go into detail. These are the headlines. You can see the full visions on our website. But in a nutshell, the products and services pillar is about a time when all products are designed for maximum value retention and minimum impact. That takes us to pillar 2. Once products can no longer be used as products, they get broken down into raw materials to go back into new products. So it's a time when materials are renewable, they're circular, non-toxic, and they're used efficiently and kept in continual circulation. And thirdly, people in society. This is a time when the people making and handling our clothes are valued and supported in an equitable, socially just, and resilient society. So with this definition, it's clear that we still have a very long way to go till we reach our collective goal. And that brings us to this timeline here. So as this slide suggests, we are likely to go through 3 distinct phases of circularity. Starting with phase 1, that's where we're at right here today, going back from 2010 to coming up to the end of it here at 2025. So this is the era we're currently today. We're innovating, we're asking questions, we're optimizing a number of different areas. All of the key components in circularity that are needed to bring together the system. So things like designing for circularity, collection and sorting systems, traceability, transparency, digital product platforms, policy change, all of these things are being brought together as lots of different puzzle pieces to be piloted in systems. In phase 2, these pilots get rolled out and replicated into the infrastructure and rollout years, which starts in 2025. The next phase, phase 2. And this is the time where we see the regenerative recycling technologies starting to industrialize and replicate, making a real noticeable difference in raw material circularity. RenewCell in Sweden are well on their way, and there's others like Worn Again, Infinited Fiber, Green3, Evernew, Carbios, Japlan, a handful of chemical and mechanical recycling technologies in development, a real milestone for raw material circularity. Leading into phase 3, 2040 to 2050, this is where the regionalized circular systems become fully optimized, they're expanded, and we work towards our end goal, which is using resources within our planetary boundaries by 2050. This is a framework. It's up to the industry to develop the detailed strategies for delivering it, which is what today is about. One last slide here. I'm probably coming up close to 5 minutes. To support the roadmap to 2050, one of our goals at World Circular Textiles Day is to chart annual circularity progress. And to do this, we've teamed up with Circle Economy and their Knowledge Hub platform to set up WCTD collection. And our aim with this collection is to build the world's largest digital library of circular textile case studies. So this can include companies, organizations, collaborations, policies, reports, any activity that's relating to circular textiles is on this hub. So if you're not there already and you're working towards circularity, make sure you get on the map. This is going to enable us to chart, to capture, and to report circularity across the industry and the progress that's being made. Once you are on that circularity map, be sure to sign up, become a signatory to WCTD. It's free, and you'll be joining over 100 other companies as we all chart the path to full circularity together. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Cindy. And I know it's short and sweet, but when we get into the breakout group, you'll have 20 or 25 very captive people ready to chat more about that. So over to you now, Petra. Welcome. Thank you. You're from Accelerating Circularity. And as Cindy, I guess, hinted, you know, we're not in a circular system. The solution isn't really there yet. And you look at that, it's going to be a 30-year time horizon. But we've got a whole heap of eager sports events organisers with loads of textiles and not knowing where on earth to send them. And so I was hoping that you could help us in the short term work out, how do we work out where to send our textiles right now? And I hear you might have some solutions to help us.
Yeah, that's a big question. But first of all, thanks so much for having me. It's great to be with you today. So yeah, my name is Petra. I'm the program manager of Accelerating Circularity in Europe. Before joining AC 4 or 5 months ago, I had a corporate career in textile and apparel supply chain, living in China, Bangladesh, and Hong Kong for almost 20 years. And since I know the industry from production floor to shop floor pretty well, I would say I've seen the impacts firsthand, of course. And that's why I'm super excited about circularity as the future. And I'm also very excited about Cindy's 2050 vision. So what does Accelerating Circularity do? So our high-level mission is to divert textiles from landfill and incineration. And we are, among all these different circular business models, we're specifically looking at textile to textile recycling. That means we're taking end-of-life textiles, we value these ones as feedstock, and we turn it into raw materials to replace virgin fibers. So as a nonprofit organization, we are the coordinator and the facilitator. So we utilize the already existing conventional supply chain of yarn spinners and extruders, fabric mills and garment factories. And we pretty much plug in the segment of collectors, sorters, pre-processors and recyclers. And then of course we need brands and retailers as well to come in and boost the demand for recycled content. So we believe through this, we can integrate circularity in an already existing conventional supply chain and also can scale really quickly. So we have taken a stakeholder-led, pre-competitive, collaborative approach. And to date, we have around 80 companies joining our monthly working groups. So just to name you a few, we have TaxAid, INE, Green, Lenzing, Zalando, and Inditex. And we have a project here in Europe, but we have another one in the US, and we hope we can go global very soon. But here in Europe, we are at the stage of mapping and modeling. So on the mapping side, we have partnered up with a provider working on a SaaS platform to map the collectors, sorters, pre-processors, and the recyclers. So it's pretty much a sort of Yellow Pages plus like an upscale version. But yes, I just want to also manage your expectations, because clearly that's the question you have to me, how easy it's going to be to just like click on a map, finding the nearest recycler, calling them and dropping off your stuff. That's not going to happen anytime soon. So there are a lot of challenges we need to solve to come to that stage. So it's about volume aggregation and meeting the requirements of the different recyclers. So we have numerous mechanical, chemical recyclers in the regions, but of course, because of different capabilities, different technologies, IP maturity levels, their feedstock requirement is very different. It's about collecting and handling, for instance, to keep these materials dry, to prevent them from cross-contamination. It's about sorting into material compositions. It's about transparency and be really clear if there are any chemicals of concerns. What about the colors? What about the dye stuffs? Are there any prints? Are there any coatings? And if yes, does this impact also the recycling process? So I guess you can see there is a lot of complexity there, but I'm also very positive that Mauro and his team is going to come in and help us with all these challenges. But for us here at Accelerating Circularity, it's really important to kickstart the process. So starting in Q2 next year, we are going to pressure test these material flows of post-consumer materials, and we'll run them along the value chain I mentioned. So really starting from the collector to the sorter to recyclers, both mechanical and chemical, to the yarn spinners, fabric mills, and garment factories in our case. So together with our brand partners and also our value chain partners, and maybe you too, so we're gonna test these flows. We're gonna design and develop physical products of yarns, fabrics, and garments using the output of these recycling processes. And we are very hands-on and practical. So our aspiration is definitely to see how these flows work in a system that is available today at scale. And then also through this quickly understand and also feedback what needs to be done to make it work better.
That's wonderful. So I think the events organisers in the room will feel slightly relieved to know that they're not going mad, that we've been looking for something that doesn't actually exist. I can't tell you the effort that I've personally gone to try and find, where do I send this palette of textiles, you know, and so I think that leads us perfectly to Maro, because we need a reverse logistics solution, and Cindy, I guess that's the solution also that you've identified that needs to happen. We need this systemic approach. Oops, there goes there goes the timer. I had my timer on. So Maro, you're from Eurotex. If you could quickly tell us what Eurotex is, and also tell us about this reverse logistics solution that we all hopefully could take advantage of, and we'll talk more in the breakout groups about how we can sort of shoehorn our value chain into that process.
For sure. Thanks, Megan, for having me. Nice also to see Petra and Cindy again, and everybody else. For those of you who don't know us, we are the official textile and apparel industry confederation based in Brussels. So our job is basically to tell to the European Union institution across the street how to help the business in changing the way textiles are made, consumed, and chosen and disposed of. And they're not waiting for us. We're going to have already 11 pieces of new legislation coming up over the next year. So you can imagine our life is almost as busy as Megan desktop by now. And I remember when Megan, you reached out to us a few months ago and said, we have an issue with events waste. I think you've been very forthcoming because somebody's concerned about events waste, somebody about discarded garments. What it is clear is that we have a big deadline, and that's beginning of 2025, January 2025. When in the European Union, all the discarded textile will have to be collected separately. So the big question is, what are we going to do with all these 5 million tons of textile waste? That's the big question which we are so busy to work on. We can't burn them, and we cannot even eat them, of course. So the question is how to give a value to what is today a waste. So this is why we launched the Rehabs initiative 20 months ago. We want to create an integrated system across Europe, which enable the large-scale uptake of circular economy. We want to turn waste, textile waste, into new valuable raw materials, which can generate other textile products or can even feed any other value chain which is interested. For that, we have brought up together more than 120 organizations so far, mostly European, but not only. And also 19 organizations from the member states, from the countries. That's because the politics, the regulatory framework, it's also very much important. To make this happen, you need also to change legislation, because currently you cannot handle waste as would be a new raw material, and we need to change that. That's just to give an example. So Rehabs is advancing. We have in the process of launching a large-scale study, which ideally will give us, before summer next year, all the information we need to have to change legislation, to get the financial resource. Most of them are already available, actually, and to bring together the key actors in different value chains. We also need to bring together all the pioneering experience that we have at this point in time. It's all about critical mass and reverse logistics, as you said, Megan, but it's also more than that. We don't want to have 5 identical plants built in 500 kilometers range from each other, because that would compete for the same feedstock and nobody would benefit out of that. So while we, of course, in a free market economy system, we also need to orchestrate a little bit. We need to organize the flows. That's what is at stake. And thanks to the fact that we have initiatives like what Cindy and Petra presented already, but we have hundreds more of those. We need to organize this. That's basically where the biggest added value of the Rehabs is laid. So we need open partnerships. We need to bring together from the chemical value chain, the collectors, sorting recyclers, the mechanical and chemical recyclers, the manufacturer, which is what we represent as Eurotex, the brand and retailers, and even the luxury value chain are at stake. This is why we're doing what we're doing. So on the one hand, we need to actually advise the policymakers. We need to bring together the stakeholders, and we need to do this in a transparent way. That's why it's also interesting for us to be here today. We never worked with Ocean Race before. I'm sure we can also be mutually beneficials. I mean, you have a tremendous impact, I guess, on communication. You have very active, you're mobilizing resources here. I think communication is what we need to also inform consumer of what is the value of recycled materials. And yes, I mean, unfortunately, I cannot be here today in the workshop area, but I'm sure this conversation does not stop here. I believe only starts today. So very glad to be here today and to give you this speech. The Rehab's Stakeholder Forum is open to involvement of any of your organization. If you're interested, I'm very happy to listen to you over the next 40 minutes, as far as I'm concerned, and then keep having this conversation, hopefully even in person, finally.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah, for sure. And I put the link to the news story on the Rehabs in the chat as well. So thank you very much. And so I think that we can see that the challenges of circularity are mimicked in our sector. You know, we have problems finding materials from rPET for a start. We have problems with our waste companies organising to send them to somewhere. So not even knowing where to send them, but even having the logistics on site to keep the textiles separately. And we're going to hear soon on some test cases and some learnings about how to do that well at events. But I think that, yeah, you know, we need to be pulling recycled PET up through our supply chain. We need our producers, and we've got some production houses, to act as intermediaries. So it's like a producer responsibility scenario where we can send our materials back potentially to them, and they have a reverse logistics eventually get to the rehubs. And I think it was really interesting what you said about the legislation coming up, and we've discussed this, many of you that I've spoken with prior to this workshop, about the fact that we think that the events and sports sectors, textiles might be in a little bit of a loophole, pardon the pun, but we may not see, we may not be focused on as a potential waste stream that kind of gets caught up into that legislation. So we certainly need to be acting responsibly. And interestingly, there's going to be a definition around waste and crossing borders with waste. So what does that mean for our materials? What state do they need to be in to be considered waste or not waste? And so that will be something also for us to think about, how we move those materials around Europe and to get them to the recycling, the best recycling place, chemical or physical, and we hear more about that coming up. So thank you very much. Look at that, we're bang on time. We shall leave the stage now, and Lise, I'll hand over to Lise, who will interview 3 more fantastic speakers. So thank you. Over to you, Lise.
Thank you, Megan. So we've just heard about the progress in the textiles and fashion sector. Let's now have a look at some recent innovations with textiles in the sports sector. And to talk about this, I have the pleasure to be joined by Hiro Shibata from Dow Japan, Tim Cross of Project Plan B, and Rebecca Johansson of Helly Hansen. Rebecca, let's start with you. So you are the Sustainability Manager at Helly Hansen, a Norwegian manufacturer of sports apparel and a partner of the Ocean Race. So I have 2 questions for you. The first one is, I'd like to know more about what you are doing in Helly Hansen in terms of recycling of textiles and circularity. And secondly, I heard you have done a lot in a test in the recycling of banners from the Ocean Race Europe with the university lab and in new technology. So we would really like to hear a bit more about this project as well.
Absolutely. Hi, Liz, and everyone. Thank you for the invitation to the workshop. We're really glad to be here, and we're also really proud sponsors and partners of the Ocean Race. So really happy for that. To your first question here, our approach to sustainability in general has always been to make sure we have the right partners in our supply chain and are conscious about material choices and really making products which can be worn for a long time. So the durability and timeless design and long-lasting performance are all very important aspects for us to do the best we can for our environmental footprint, where I think especially the timeless design and longevity is closely linked to circularity, which is what we are talking about here today. So we are designing and developing products to, first of all, ensure that they can be worn for a long time, and ideally also be repaired if necessary to continuous life cycle. And we also aim to guide people on wearing our products and how to care and wash for them, by example, washing guidances and so on our website. And then when approaching circularity, we are following the waste hierarchy, where our priority is to make durable and long-lived products. Then if something is breaking, we absolutely encourage repair to the extent it's possible. Really to keep the value of the product at its highest level for as long as possible. But then, of course, all products will come to an end of life sooner or later, especially products used in more harsh conditions or closer to the body, like base layers and so on. And here we have been working on how we can make sure that the materials in those products are treated as rather byproducts than waste, because we don't want anything to go to waste, right? And then your second question regarding the recycling project that we have been working on together with the Ocean Race. So general textile recycling, we are still in a very early stage of exploring and understanding how we can fully close the loop for textile by recycling back to new high value material, which can be used over and over again. So that is really the aspiration. We have been working with a company called GR3N or Green and their technology, and also their partner Plast Nordic for over 1 year to test out their polyester recycling technology. So here we have included some of the Ocean Race banners and flags in our last trial, which are made from 100% polyester. So when we went through that trial, first of all, if we had to cut out all the hard parts, if there are any. We cut them out by scissors, by hand actually. And then the textile material was shredded in Sweden at the research institute called RISE. The material is now with GR3N ready to be depolymerized. And I'm sure Fabio or Rune, who are also in this workshop, are happy to share more details about the innovative technology that they're using for recycling. So just shortly from me, when the material is depolymerized, it removes all the impurities, such as the colors, other type of fibers, which are not polyester, and so on. And they are then able to build up the polymer again and make granulates, which has similar or same properties as virgin polyester. So really the ability to decolor and really achieve a very high quality of the recycled material is for us very attractive, as then the recycled material can be used again for the same applications over and over again. And that would be the ideal for a closed loop system.
Thank you very much, Rebecca, for sharing this great example with us. So now I'm turning towards Tim. Tim, you're from Project Plan B. You're an expert in textile recycling for the corporate workwear industry. And today you come with a great example of collaboration between many members of the value chain, Formula E, CSM Live, who does their look and overlay, and yourselves. So please tell us about your small circle test case.
Hi, it's great to be here and to give you a chance to explain what we're trying to do. So we come to this challenge from the textile clothing sector, and we've been trying to work out how we can make our clothing, particularly in the uniform and workwear sector, more circular. And for us, that was looking at circularity through design. So if you design clothing to be recycled, you stand a far greater chance of being able to recycle it. So through that design process, we learned a huge amount about what we needed to do to make everything that we do recyclable. So all of our clothing is designed to be recycled. For us, that is using a monofiber approach and using mechanical recycling technologies, which enable us to convert textile polyester into something that looks a lot like that. So that's rPET, recycled polyester. So we're able to get our textile polyester back to this. Now, we were speaking to some of our clients who then explained to us, in the event sector, we've got a huge amount of polyester textile in scrim, in banners and flags. And this is something we'd never looked at. So we said, well, surely if it's the same same textile polyester, we can do the same kind of thing. So we started looking at it. We started analyzing the fabric that's used for banners and scrim, and we, okay, yeah, that looks pretty similar to what we're working with. Let's collect enough and put it through and see if we get the same results. And we have literally over the last 4 or 5 days put through just under 3 tons of banners and scrim from lots of different events, but predominantly from Formula E, all working with our partners at CSM. And we've been able to take this and convert it also back into rPET. So we're just analyzing the quality that we can get out of it now. And our assumption, because it came out looking really, really good, is that we'll be able to turn that back into textile polyester again. And there are going to be a huge number of different options available to us. So it's not just all going to be perfect and be able to spun straight back into fiber, but most of it should be able to do that. Or if it's not of great quality, then hopefully we can get it back and use it in injection molding or anything else. So we can make chairs, we can make anything else that we want out of it. The point is we've got it back to a reusable level. Now, it's different to chemical recycling. We're not trying to unwrap it all the way back to its monomers. We're just trying to get it back to a polymer that we can then move forward again. And for us, that's a lot quicker, a lot easier. And as far as the technology goes, we can probably get there a lot sooner. So that's why we're approaching it from this point. But we think we've got something here that is going to be really useful for the events industry. And we're just beginning to understand what the scales are like, and then trying to understand how we can adapt what we're doing to encourage more people in this market that we're just learning about, to how we get it all back in and get it back into a central point to recycle it. But it's really exciting.
Thank you very much, Tim, for this very concrete example. And now let's hear from our third guest, Hiro Shibata from Dow Japan. Will talk to us about quite a similar example of recycling, but with also some legacy objects. So Shibata-san, you are an expert in material science from Dow Japan, and you have managed a pilot project of banner recycling for the Tokyo Games. So please tell us a bit about this project and how you see this recycling process being used more widely in the future.
Right. So let me just briefly start introducing Dow. So we are a chemical and material science company, and which produces diverse products serving different industries. And we have been partner with IOC last 10 years. So since we started this sponsorship, we have been seeking the way how we can actually become a partner on purpose, deploying our expertise to really joining forces with the science and the sports to make impact. So examples of that had been like the IOC Carbon Partnership as an example, and also this circularity project in Tokyo 2020 is also another one. Let me share one slide that I would like to share. Let me try to share my screen. Let me see. Do you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. So 3 months have passed since Tokyo 2020 Games. I believe all of us witnessed the power of sports to engage and inspire. Today, I'd like to talk about this Dow's collaboration with Toppan. This is examples of combining our material science and the Toppan's product expertise and partnerships with multiple stakeholders, including IOC, Tokyo 2020, and local municipalities. So enabling sustainable solutions and inspiring others. So as we all know, look and signage are essential to create atmosphere of an event, engage athletes and the participants, but it can also be a major source of waste, as Megan touched at the beginning. Working hand in hand with Toppan, we developed this recyclable banner fabric. Components such as membrane, mesh, thread, and eyelets are all polyolefins, so single plastic, instead of commonly used mixed plastics and metal. Our banner did not compromise quality. It met all the stringent specifications such as softness, durability, and printability required by the largest and most complex sporting event in the world. Being selected to decorate Athlete Village and international broadcasting and press centers to welcome athletes and the media from all over the world. The games are over now, banners had been collected and currently undergoing the recycling steps with the aid of our compatibilizer. The recycled material created helped addressing the environmental goals of the games, resulting in approximately 30 to 35% fewer greenhouse gas emissions compared to the incinerating conventional banners. With partnership with IOC, in the middle, a unique historical mark activation with Tokyo 2020 emblems, and our thought and wish on this project are printed for the recycled products and distributed to schools as a legacy of Tokyo 2020 games. So this is the way that we really like tapping into the power of sports to really engage and inspire, to really like show through this tangible recycled product. To the best of our knowledge, this is probably the very first time that such a historical mark is deployed for recycled products from the games. So those flower pots are delivered to in total 100 public schools in Tokyo and the north of Japan, near Fukushima, with 40,000 educational leaflets at the bottom, and the lectures at selected schools to raise awareness and tell the importance of circular economy. So in some schools at Higashimatsushima in the north of Japan, flower pots will be used for sapling to restore forest and wetland damaged by Fukushima earthquake. So in both cases, so we request schools to use those flower pots till they break, so that hopefully they will stay for a decade or longer as tangible legacy of the games and tell the stories to new students to come. So it's really like, I'd like to acknowledge all the internal and external team members from the Tokyo 2020 IOC and municipalities who share the value and the passions to make this happen. Hope this project will also inspire and raise the bar for the sports and event industry to design more sustainable solutions and use the engagement power of sports to help accelerate and engage and transition to a sustainable future. Thank you. Back to you, Lise.
Thank you, Shibata-san. And to conclude, I would like to go back to Tim to ask a question on the more technical side of recycling. We heard about examples of chemical and also mechanical recycling of textiles. So my question is, how do you choose between these solutions? What is the most appropriate for event textiles?
It's a very complicated question to answer swiftly, but with chemical recycling, you are trying to unpack everything to separate it all up so that you can separate the dyes and any other contaminants away. And with mechanical recycling, you're using design as the key part. You're designing everything to be recycled. So with banners, we're going, right, we need to make sure that everything is 100% polyester. There's no reason why it shouldn't be. It just hasn't been. So let's make sure that we design it for circularity. When you then put it through a mechanical system, what you put in is what you're going to get out. You're not making a huge amount of change. You're just turning it back into something that you can use again. And for us and for what we're doing, it's very simple. The costs are much lower and it gives you the opportunity of going very quickly back to something that you can then use to start again. With chemical recycling, you're taking it back to a point of going, I don't know what we want to do with this. So we're going to take it back to a point where we can do just about anything with it. And there are going to be always times when you need chemical recycling, and there are going to be times when mechanical recycling is going to be the best option. And it's going to be horses for courses. You've got to decide what's the best route. But the key thing is everything that we do, we need to design it with an end in mind. We have to know what we're going to do with it. We're going to design it to be recycled through this technology. And we're going to understand what the cost implications are of doing it that way. And we're going to understand what the end limitations are of doing it that way. We can either unwrap it the whole way and pay a lot of it and hope that that's the right thing to do, or we can do a simpler route and get it back to a point where we're going to use it again and it's going to have exactly the same values we put in. It's trying to decide which is the right route to go down. And, you know, we're always open to it. There will always need to be lots of different recycling technologies out there.
Thank you very much for explaining us these more technical details, which are also very important. So thank you for my three panelists for these inspiring projects. And let me now hand over to Jill for our third and last panel.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Lise. My name is Jill Savory, and I'm with 11th Hour Racing, and I'll be moderating the next great panel. We have technology is going to put our two panelists up on the screen. We have Giles Stanford from Birmingham Commonwealth Games and CSM Live, and Caroline Lewis from Paris 2024 Olympics. Great to see you both. Thank you for joining.
Hello, Jill.
So we know that innovation in the materials that we use, the way we design look and overlay, and the collection, recovery, circularity of the materials is what we need. And we're really interested to hear what you are doing at two upcoming, very global sporting events, the Commonwealth Games and Paris 2024 Olympic and Paralympic Games. And I'll begin with Giles. You can kick us off. So CSM Live works with a lot of major sporting events. You have a lot of personal experience working on major sporting events, many Olympic Games in your career. And you lead the charge at the Commonwealth Games in this area on sustainability. You've been really involved in this group so far. So we're really interested to hear what you have in store for us next year for the Commonwealth Games in this area.
Jill, thank you very much for the flattering introduction. It's not quite true, but anyway. So yeah, no, I have used the COVID period quite productively to get more into this whole textiles recycling process and how we can do it better. And there's a lot of, what I discovered is there's a lot of dead ends out there. There's a lot of smoke and mirrors. And so over the last 18 months, we've kind of fine-tuned down into the people who Tim and the teams at Green and Nordplast are the people who actually have come to the top and who have got solutions. And what we want to do now is to go forward with these various companies. And as Tim was just saying, we've got a whole process, which is we've been collecting things this summer, sent it down to Project Plan B, a mixture of materials from Formula E and from the UEFA 2020 competition that was this year, which have gone into the process. And Tim and I have been talking the last couple of days to kind of evaluate how it's going. But the key, as you say, we get involved in a lot of big sports events, and we print an awful lot of textiles. And what we are doing, particularly around the Commonwealth Games now, is to make sure that when we're in this design process, and we probably won't go to production now until January, February for the majority of the flags, the barrier jackets, the fence scrims, all a bit high volume textiles, is to make sure that the design process, what we design, is a single fiber. And so for the materials that have just gone through the process, we had to cut out, we had the guys in the warehouse with knives cutting out all the eyelets, the polypropylene banding that goes down the sides. And we can very easily say, right, no, we want it to be 100% polyester. We don't need eyelets. We can put little loops in that we can use the cable ties or bits, to fix to the fences. So when it comes off the fence, it's very simple just to bundle it up and put it in the process and send it straight to the recycling. And it's as ever, particularly the budgets are important, and it needn't be more expensive. If we catch it at this time, it's no more expensive to do this and incorporate the monofilament into the process. And so we're kind of looking at all the barrier jackets, all the flags, all the fence scrims, and the other thing that we're trying to consider is reduction. Do we need to have quite so much? There is always the aspiration of all these games is to put the bright color and be a festival and be bright and looking fantastic, and it's still important. But if we can recycle it, if we have an output at the end and we can keep that material in a circularity, and my ambition is to try and make this year's fence scrim into next event's uniforms. And if we can do that, that is, I think we are being super innovative. And it's also worth considering, as you were talking about, the logistics of it. And we had some discussions with Tim a couple of months ago about dirt. And it is quite difficult to make sure that the guys and girls who are on site keep it clean. and hopefully we've managed to achieve that. But different events. I mean, I think it'll be fascinating next year with the Qatar World Cup, where the fence scrims are going to be out in the sandy environment and will pick up an awful lot of dirt. How to recycle those? If there's a very high mineral content, do we have to have a different process? Do we have to wash it? What do we have to do? So there's lots of kind of little bits of operational inspiration, thought that we need to kind of manage as well, of that reverse logistics of how can we keep it in the best shape to get it back into recycling. Because if we've got to clean it, we're kind of defeating the object of it, to be honest. There's a lot of wastage in there, but there is a big request for that material. So there's lots of aspects, and I like to kind of think that we have got, working alongside all the companies, and particularly what we've just done in the last couple of weeks, we have a solution for textiles. But what I want to do is to make it more efficient, easier to handle. So it's not a hassle. It's just what you do. It is not something that needs an awful lot of extra time and thought. This is just the new norm. This is how we do it. And it's often more difficult to simplify something than it is to complicate it. So what we're driving towards, how can we make this really simple so it's just the new norm to do?
I'm writing that down. I think that's where
but Birmingham, we are, we're pushing an open door. Birmingham are a great client to have. They're really up for it. And kind of having a good look from all the camera angles. Do we actually need this? How can we make sure it comes back? And then the Commonwealth Games Federation partnerships are already, so trying to talk to the next event to kind of make sure that these materials come back next time round. And then we're reusing a lot of the hardware that all our materials get placed on an aluminium frame. So let's make it all standard so everything can come back and be reused. So there's kind of some long-term thinking going along with the CGFP, which is really helpful and very, they can help bang heads together and get people to think long-term rather than just a single games.
Outstanding. Thank you. I'm going to probably come back to you with a question or two, but right now I'd like to have Caroline take the floor from Paris 2024. And you launched a task force earlier this year on sustainable look and overlay for Paris 2024. And I'm curious about if you can tell us about what you have in mind, what experiments you might intend to run in just 3.5 years' time, and innovations that have come up. So if you can just tell us about that, that'd be great.
Thanks, Jill, with pleasure. Maybe in order to do so, I have to explain just a minute what is our circular economy approach for Paris 2024. Our starting point was to estimate the amount of resources we were going to produce, to use, and eventually to dispose at the end of the games. As you know, our Olympic Games will be just one time, and so we can't reuse. And so we have single use products for this game. So that's why we realize this resource management plan, which is an estimation of all the total amount of resources we're going to consume. And for Paris 2024, from now until the end of the games, we have estimated the total amount, the volume and types and localization of resource we were going to use and what was going to happen with them. So for look and signage, the total amount of products that we estimated is nearly 300 tons of materials. This is more or less 1 square kilometer of printed material. And I don't know if you guys went to Paris last month or if you're a fan of contemporary art, but maybe you've heard that we had the Arc de Triomphe temporarily and totally wrapped up with fabrics. What we are going to produce for Paris is 40 times the Arc de Triomphe wrapped with printed fabrics, to give you an idea. So with this work, we have the main figures of what is look and signage for us. these 300 tons of materials we have to deal with at the end of the game. We know where all this volume will be, all the sites from Paris to Marseille and all the other competition sites we will have. And we also know that 98% of this material will be plastic-based. So we have a single-use plastic problem, because I didn't give you the main elements for Paris 2024, is we have this big commitment that is no Paris 2024 goal. 100% of our resources has to find a second life. So I've got these 300 tons to deal with at the end, and I have to find a good solution for them. You may know that for plastic in the world, like less than 10% of plastic is recycled. So maybe it's, well, we've got kind of a challenge. And that is to explain why we decided at the beginning of the year to launch this task force. And we joined forces with our brand and communication direction, our sites and infrastructure, innovation team as well, accessibility, procurement, etc., etc. So it was kind of a big task force, and we asked them a single question, which was, guys, what do you need to meet your quality, timekeeping, cost standards within ensuring our second life goal, which is Paris 2024 goal in 100% recovery. And we are quite happy because we just released yesterday the output of this 9 or 10 months working together, which is one, a guide, and two, a second, a toolbox. In this guide, you will find all the recommendation, all the questions you have to ask yourself in order to easier the process and ensure we will meet our goals. You will find an approach with the whole life cycle from conception to end of life. You may know that 80% of the impacts and the costs are decided within the conception phase. So it was super important for us to reduce the scope, just question the use, question the needs, and so on. In this guide, you have also all the recommendations from Paris of products we have to use and the ones that will be forbidden. Also a lot of content as a prices analysis, because our teams were also very curious about, okay, no problem to meet the challenge of 100% recyclable, reuse, etc. But how much it's going to cost us? And we did this price analysis, and we demonstrated that most of the time, the sustainable products are the cheapest one. So this was a very, very important point for them. This is a guide. For the toolbox, we have 7 tools within 3 main pillars. The first pillar is how can I be sure that I made a good choice? What is a good choice of products? So for that, we provided a checklist of all the questions you have to ask for to be sure that you cover all the subjects, and a list of the main products that are usually used in the look and signage. And we screened these products with 17 criteria from technical character, prices, quality, and sustainability. And I thank Liz and all the IOC team for the good studies, the super good studies they did with for the environmental impacts that we use for this work, and we just adapted with French sectors. So you have this big list of products, ensuring you to be sure that you are going to make the good choice with quality, cost, timekeeping, and sustainability, and a list of all the innovation you can use in order to reemplace some products. So this is the first pillar. The second one is, how do I find the good partner, the good actor who will produce for me, help me in doing all this. So you have two lists, a list of actors which provide solutions in line with our standards, and a list of actors who can ensure the second life, based on all the sites Paris 2024 will have from, again, Marseille, Lille, Paris. And a benchmark, a kind of a catalog of all the possibilities you have in reusing textile fabrics. At the end, a third range of tools, which is how to make the choice. This comes with a generic tender document and a checklist of all the questions you have to ask to when you're in a tender process. So here you have all the work we've done this year. So we were quite busy. Now the next steps are to test again and again. We are waiting for a signage manager, which is arriving at the beginning of next year. So we are super eager to have this to have him or her on board. And so the first step will be to make this onboarding of all this work for him or her. We are also waiting for a main partner to operate the look and signage. So we will have a big work on onboarding this partner. And then we cross finger as everybody that we had a non-COVID year in order to have a lot of events to be able to test all this reuse and recycle strategy to be ready in 3.5 years. Thanks.
Thank you very much. That was a lot. And I wrote that down also. I think everybody would be interested in reading those tools and guides. And I guess I was wondering, because your two events are so close together and you're trying to test and innovate and find partners and develop new ideas on how to use the right materials to keep them in a circular fashion, being reused. Is there any collaboration between two big events like this? So for example, Giles, you said, let's take this year's fence scrim and turn it into next year's uniforms. Whose uniforms and who do you bring in to that kind of thinking in terms of partnerships?
That's a very good question. I mean, part of a challenge actually is around the kind of the procurement frameworks, because someone needs to have a very holistic view of the whole process, because a procurement will appoint CSM or whoever to do signage and branding, but then 3 months, 4 months, a year before, it might have appointed someone else to be the merchandise partner or the uniform partner. And connecting all that together takes a lot of time. And it is very difficult because it comes down to price sometimes, because, you know, someone who's taken on a uniform project maybe doesn't understand what is available through recycled materials. So there has to be a very strong leadership within an organizing committee to drive that forward and to create the connections between the different events to try and hang on to that circularity. But sometimes just the time is against you because it all moves at a different pace. But you know, and that's one of the things that always happen. You know, people, you know, we can recycle, we can reuse the bags, we can create, you know, gifts and such like after the end. But the market has moved on. There's no one to buy it 6 months after the event. So you have to think of new challenges of how to create a second life. And it's not always about creating a product that someone can buy, because you might end up having to gift it to your volunteer workforce, because the market, the buyers have gone. And that's a challenge. It works sometimes, but not often.
And if you could tell us quickly what you think is perhaps the number one experiment or innovation at the Commonwealth Games in this area of circularity in textiles, what do you think it would be? Because you did mention, let's make everything out of one material, and that would be amazing.
I think that it sounds ridiculous, but I think if I can do that, which is perfectly doable, it's a step forward. And I mean, there's vast. We create a huge amount of sort of one-off signage. That's what we call functional area signage, which is really tedious, but there is in Olympic Games, there's probably 200,000 signs. Now, I reckon at least 50% of those can be used again. So if we can, from a design point of view, think, let's just, all the media work for them, all the sort of really boring signage, why can't we just keep it? But everybody wants to attach a brand to it. So no, we're not having a brand on this one. It's just going to say what it does. And we take that and we reuse it again and again and again. And some of that very simple thinking, if we can move that forward, we'll have gone in the right direction. Because what we do is not complicated. It's just making it, is simplifying it and saying, right, we can use that again. We can use that again. And I think if we can achieve that, we'll be good.
And I guess
same to what Paris can do. What can Paris send to Milan? What can, I mean, there isn't another, there isn't, the next Commonwealth Games isn't appointed yet, but what, we're constantly thinking, what can we send on? What can be used at the next Commonwealth Games?
Yeah, no, that's a super good point. I believe for look and signage that resources are grounded and the value is from the territories the resources are in. And for other resources like a desk or furniture, well, it makes sense to send it. For signage, it has to be valorized, or the second life has to be the closest possible as the site they have been put into. So in terms of look and signage, our legacy will be more immaterial in terms of process, in terms of industrial way of doing, in terms of goals and so on. So for other kind of resources, we are definitely thinking about transferring, giving, selling to other committees. For this one, the second life will be in France for most of them. And you had a super good point, which is time. At the end of the game, I will not work anymore. I will not be there anymore. So we have to find solutions which are time effective. So that's why we are now approaching the solution as the different panels of solutions. We definitely have to find some actions with a lot of value and social creation, and I will give you an example in a few minutes. We will have to work on memorabilia to do this kind of licensing products to give memories of the game. We will have to think about reusing, for example, in agriculture or works and sectors. And at the end, recycle if nothing else is possible. So we will need, due to our volume, we have to explore all the range of possibilities. Yeah, I just wanted to give you one example. We just did 2 weeks ago. We had all the flags and the banner from the Paris bid with the old logo, all the partners and so on. And so we can't use these materials anymore. And we were wondering what we could do with it. And we had this very, very great NGO, which is called Ethical Fashion Sport. I don't exactly know the English translation, but it's about onboarding students on ethical fashion through fabrics from sports. And so we gave them all the material we had, and the students did some fashion objects which are absolutely beautiful. And so we are going to do this until 2024 to have a fashion show during the game with all the material we will have produced and which would have been transformed by the students.
It's fantastic. Thank you for sharing those examples. We could go on, and I'm very much looking forward to the innovation that both of these events will I know come up with and really support the industry. So thank you very much for your time, Giles and Caroline. We are going to go to a small break. Everyone knows when you're in these long Zoom calls, you don't want to take up too much time, yet you need to give people just a refreshment break and get up and stretch. So we're going to take a 10-minute break. And in the meantime, there's going to be a video that hopefully we've got the sound working. So please do come back in 10 minutes and we will then be ready to go into our workout groups.
The sea state really changed, and I remember this having 40 knot average wind speeds, these big squalls and gusts up to 50 knots. I just remember looking over my shoulder driving, sort of half terrified, or a third terrified, a third in amazement and enjoyment, and then a third just in awe of just the power and the beauty of the ocean, and just to see the sort of ocean in its full fury and its full glory, I guess. That was, I think the most lasting thing I'll keep that forever.
So I basically spent every day, all day on the water. So for me, the ocean is my home. I went sailing with my family in Slovenia with our family sailing boat, and it was my brother's birthday. After, half an hour of sailing, this group of, I think, 30 or 40 dolphins came to the boat and they stayed with us for 2 hours. And it was amazing just to watch them play around the boat when we were sailing. It was beautiful.
To this day, I still remember my first time in the offshore. I was seasick for first 8 hours. It was absolutely terrible. But when I came to shore, I was in love, really. And for me, that's where it began.
You're playing in an arena that you don't have any control over. You're there as a temporary guest.
In some ways, the ocean is all I really know. It's my passion, it's my profession. Human impact is real and it's at an all-time high. The signs are right in front of us, whether it's rising temperatures, extreme weather, melting ice pack, commercial fishing. Well, if we don't tackle these issues head on, the Earth won't be inhabitable for future generations. We're really focused on solutions.
We can't continue the depletion of the planet like we have. You just look at the changes that have occurred in single lifetimes, and it can't stay on that road.
Everyone can do little things in their day-to-day life. It needs to be a global scale, effectively change. It needs to at a political level.
Educate yourself on the matter of how important is the ocean, and then choose governments who understand the importance of climate change.
If every person did just a small change, with 7 billion people in the world, it would lead to a really, really big change.
The purpose of the ocean race is to unite people to achieve the extraordinary and to contribute to a healthier ocean and planet.
Countries need to have stronger and robust laws for them to protect their waters, protect their environment, and protect their people.
To give the ocean legal rights is absolutely key.
Posidonia seagrass is one of the most important carbon sink that we have in the planet.
It's called the green gravel. We basically seed small rocks with seaweed spores in the lab.
I can announce that we will update our international ocean agenda next year.
I am delighted to give my support to this excellent idea of the ocean race.
Ocean summits that bring together the worlds of sport, industry, government, science, and ocean advocates.
Although the ocean can produce a mighty roar as its waves crash on our shores, it has no voice in our public debates. So I salute you for speaking up for it.
There cannot be a healthy planet without a healthy ocean. Relay for Nature, the concept was to bring all these together, the biodiversity loss, the climate change, the declining ocean's health, and these conferences happening around the world. The Relay for Nature movement is really to bring the synchronicity together and make people realize this is all one thing and we're all in this together.
Start acting right now. We don't have time anymore. This race for nature has to be won, otherwise there's no survival for humanity.
Everyone has to understand that we are really at a critical time and that we must move forward and put the solutions in place that already exist.
Action is well overdue and we just need to act on this. It's one ocean, and it's really what connects us all.
Let's change the course of the world.
Great. Hi everyone. We'll wait till 3:25. I hope you enjoyed those videos if you hung around to watch them. The last one and one in the middle there, they're what's called Blue Mind, and those videos we created for our ocean summits. So we talked to some people about the whole concept of blue mind and about the power of the ocean to, touch you emotionally. And so we created those sort of, I guess, almost like palate cleanser moments. And I don't know if you blissed out, but I definitely bliss out when I watch those. We've got a series of about 10 of them. They're amazing. So I chose 2 of them for your viewing pleasure today. So I hope everyone had a break. I actually ended up sitting there watching those videos, but you can find loads of videos and lots of things that we've done with the Ocean Race and our Racing with Purpose program on our website. It's also got our Sustainable Sports Excellence section, so it will let you know what we're doing around our operations, our greenhouse gas emission strategies there, our sustainable sourcing codes there, and very soon our sustainability action plan will be there as well to share. So you'll be able to see our more technical approach to sustainability management of the Ocean Race. And I must say a great big thank you to 11th Hour Racing and Jill Savory, who you just heard in the last session, is the sustainability director for 11th Hour Racing. They're our premier partner and founding partner of the sustainability program. So yeah, we're very, very fortunate to have their support, and that's why we can do workshops such as today. So really, really great. Now, Indra, many of you may have been on the email with Indra. Here she is spotlighted. And so she's been working with me on doing these workshops that we've had after the last innovation workshop. And this is coming to a close now, our focus on look and overlay. But Indra's focus is very much on innovation and a lot of technology, isn't it? And it would be really interesting to get your perspective on what you've heard so far, and as we go into the workshop mode as well. I'll do a little bit of housekeeping before we go into the workshop mode, but yeah, you can give us any thoughts.
Hi everyone who I haven't said hello yet on the chat. Good to see you all here. Good to see you all back, I guess, most of us. Yeah, really interesting first part. Great to see how those ideas that we've discussed for actually past year has been scaling up and new innovation has been added. As Megan mentioned, we worked on and tried to tackle this innovation topic already since the last workshop last year during the pandemic. And we actually had several working groups repetitively meeting online and discussing the state of art of innovation for events and sustainability, seeing what could be adapted and used as an examples that could be scaled, that could be shared with the industry. And actually, we ended up with a conclusion that maybe it's not enough of innovation, or it's not large enough to be used as a case study. Therefore, we actually need to do more work in maybe splitting that into different areas and looking into particular areas of where innovation could happen. And circularity is actually one of them. Therefore, we are having this workshop today very much focused on textiles and circularity of that particular area. And well, if we were to conclude what we saw in the first part, well, first of all, I guess everyone is excited to see that a lot of good stuff is actually already there. It's not words anymore. It's happening. It happened in Tokyo. It's going to happen in Paris. And a lot of some big events are actually having great pioneers already doing this impossible work. But well, in order for this to become a wider adopted thing, as always the case with innovation, so to move it from the innovative concept into something that's actually becoming a habit and the rule, well, it needs to be implemented. It needs to be connected, actually, as Giles said, in order to scale it up and see it from different perspectives. And then, of course, it must be tested and it must be measured so we could know what trade-offs should be prioritized, as we saw in some of the questions in the chat, that maybe we need to choose sometimes from moving it overseas versus recycling. So we can't know what to prioritize if we don't measure that. So that's at the large scheme of things, but now it's time for each of us to see how we can actually do our part in order to build back better and implement that innovation. So we'll now divide and conquer this vision. So we'll be split by the tech team into different groups, right, Megan?
Yeah, we will. Not quite yet. I just need to do one more little bit of housekeeping. But yeah, you should. I've just put some notes into the chat, so you should automatically end up in the room that you were assigned to. If you've a late attendee or somehow I didn't get your email, then you'll be left hanging, and our tech team will pop you into a random room. If you go to that document, you can see which room you're meant to be in. So if you are left hanging in the main room after everyone's gone, just tell our tech support, oh, I'm meant to be in room 3, and they'll put you in. So don't be shy about putting your video and audio on to let them know where you think you should be. So we have a Google Doc. You can click through to that. The facilitators, it'll be myself, Indra, Jill, or Lise. Ultimately, what we want to get to is to be able to articulate a vision for textile circularity with events, considering the vision, the 2020 vision that Cindy spoke to earlier. So we've got 3 pages there. Now, really, at the end of it, you don't need to put a massive amount of content into those boxes. Just reflect on where will we be when textile circularity is at that stage of the life cycle and of the vision up to 2050. And I think the most important part, as Indra just said, is up to 2025. We're in this experimentation cycle right now. And I think, hearing from Giles and Caroline and Rebecca and Tim, they were examples of small circle experiments. Obviously, we need to get to the point, we will get to the point where these large systems and circles are happening automatically. And actually, by the 2nd or 3rd phase in the 2050 vision, we won't have anything to worry about. We know that our textiles are coming through recycled RPET. We know that the likes of Giles are already doing single polymer creation of our look and overlay materials. We know that our waste company and our production houses have already got the reverse logistics sorted out because rehubs exist, and the myriad of potentially competing systems are now working as one. So that's we want to see if we can articulate that. But importantly, I want to say don't get too strung up on that, because the next section, the 2nd section of the workshop, is about measurement. And that 82% of people that responded to the survey that said they have no clue about their single-use plastic percentage from look and overlay, we want to try and see what we need to do to measure that. What are our practical hurdles that we've got in front of us? What do we need to put into contracts with cleaners? What do we need to do to get this working? So I really want you to probably put 2/3 of the effort into that and a third of the effort into the former. So we want to come out with a vision and a commitment to measure and transparently report. So we'll do I think I know how to do the breakout rooms, yes? You're going to magically get popped in. Tech support, please help any loose ends. I have no clue if I'm going to actually be one of those loose ends because I couldn't work out how to assign myself. So let's see. Here we go. And then I think you'll be automatically dragged back. You get some kind of a minute countdown or something, so be aware of that. Here we go. We've only got 9 more minutes to go, so I'm going to do my summary of our team in like 30 seconds. And the big takeaway, as endorsed by Giles from CSM Live, is that we, from a measurement point of view, should absolutely, as event organisers, push it back onto our production houses to not only provide us the invoice for our items, but to give us the metrics that we need. And I guess then it's on our shoulders as the events organisers and, you know, colleagues like Inez, who does our purchasing in this department, to be diligently asking for this information, and then where does it land inside our organisation. And we heard from Marietta and others about the development of tools for this very reason. So that's the big takeaway for us. We can lean on our production houses to get the data, and there are tools in development that we'll be able to use to get this. And then, as we heard from Phil, there's going to be technology to be able to prove our claims. So they were our big takeaways from our group. Jill, would you like to go next?
Sure. Just really quickly, just highlight, you know, the main focus of our conversations, which didn't follow exactly in the order of the worksheet, but they were all very interesting. Basically, transparency, measurement, questions about how you get the data to actually measuring inputs into an event and outputs, where are things going. You know, we need tools to do all of that. And we talked about 2 tools in particular, Tracker Plus and Trace. And there may be more, but those are a couple of them being developed with the goal of, you know, as an event organizer, you could specify what materials are coming into your event and measure and track where they're going at the end, and noticing the gaps and the things that need to be fixed. We spent some time on that, but really great discussion. Could talk all day.
Awesome. Lise, what were the big takeaways from your group?
We touched on many topics in our group, but on the topic of measurement, so we could agree again that not much is measured today, and that's an issue. And we don't really know where we could measure lots of things, but our suppliers need some guidance on what to measure, and ideally also have some common frameworks that we use between event organizers and main suppliers. Would be helpful to be able to collect more meaningful data. So that's something we've started to work on at the IOC, and maybe we could continue to work on this with others to have some common frameworks to collect the data, and then share some of the results, and push the suppliers also to make their own investigations. And another topic is the importance of life cycle analysis data. So we started to gather some data through the study that we did last year, but it was just a start, and it really is important to continue to have this level of information to be able to assess the new materials that are coming on the market. So that's also an important aspect, to continue to compile some LCA data.
Wonderful. I think that definitely a big takeaway can be for us to work out our metrics and our methodology for measuring, for sure. So we'd be very happy to see the progress of that work, Lise, and see if we can all adopt it. And Indra, any great takeaways from you?
Yeah, interesting discussion as well. So, we talked about Vision 2050 and what it means to different events, mainly what it means the scaling local innovation to the global level. And that could be that obviously would be a great opportunity and potential for global events who now might have solutions at some locations, but not at all the locations where they are at. So that the importance of getting into this hub approach and spread the innovation, versus also sometimes not think or not wait for the local innovation to happen, but think about circularity as a global, at a global scale. And well, the important point is to compare actually different points, different data of of impact data from logistics, maybe transportation, and in order to make those informed decisions, that sometimes maybe you don't need to wait for local approach, and just shipping could actually still bring a better impact. So local versus global approach, and basically how big should be the circles and what we are aiming at, and of course the importance of measurement in order to make those decisions. And when it comes to measurement, we actually didn't have so much time to discuss, so we are still continuing that on the document, but we heard of an interesting solution from Roger in the US from the Green Sports Alliance. Jill, I know that you're also part of that group. So he shared that in the US, you guys have already a solution that's been tested, and that could maybe be shared with all of us here one day, and that maybe we don't need to reinvent the wheel, and somewhere we do have good learnings already.
Yeah, that would be certainly the case. I think that the US has got just a very different scale of production and reproduction, if you know what I mean. So the amount of stuff that's being produced, and then they've got sort of a critical level of processing facilities to manufacture in country, which obviously feeds itself. So that's obviously what we're hoping for in Europe as well. And then there's lots of straggler countries around the world that we need to work out. So yeah, the exporting and importing of the materials is probably going to stay with us for a little while. Something that Giles also brought up, sorry to keep picking on you, Giles, but he was saying, in terms of a vision for our industry for the next 5 years, or the next 4 years up to 20. Well, actually, it's 3 years now, isn't it? Up to 2025. The innovation needs to happen, but we all agree that we can play a part in pulling the recycled material through the supply chain by requesting it. But at this point, it does cost more. And Catherine from RAT mentioned that there may be subsidies and incentives coming, but they're still several years away as well. So as event organisers, we may need to make some hard decisions on prioritising where we spend our money. And we can't do that, keep circling back, until we have the data. We don't know how big a problem or an impact this is compared to other issues that we need to manage at our events. So firstly, we need to measure so that then we can manage, and then we can actually decide, okay, yes, this is a priority issue that we should put some of our budget line items into, or you know what, these other issues over here need action more urgently, and we'll wait for the industry to solve this for us. So I think that's something to look at. And I think somebody else in our group, sorry, I can't remember who it was, but I think the Power of Sports is a really interesting platform for all of the circularity groups out there to use. Even though some of our solutions might be a tiny drop in the ocean and quite minuscule when it comes to the practical elements, the demonstration of the solutions is, I think, really powerful with our audiences, and in the context of our events, and using our platforms for this to showcase sustainability in action, I guess. So I think, yeah, some of these solutions that we're looking at right now in the next 5 years or so might be a little bit bespoke and not scalable, but I think they're very much, really, really great from a demonstration point of view of what we can do. And so I think we could also, and sports people, organisations in the room would say, please use us. approach us with concepts and proposals for various experimentation. I know that at the Ocean Race we will be very keen to hear from everybody. So I don't know if there's any final notes, but that brings us perfectly to 4:30. Oops, we just went to 4:31. Any final words from anyone? Otherwise, Lise, do you want to maybe have a final word as my main collaborator in this project?
Thank you for coming for us today. It was a great pleasure to interact with all of you. Thank you all for your participation and all the great ideas you shared with us. It's really helping us to move forward. So I hope you enjoyed the workshop as well, and you learned some interesting ideas, and it gave you some ideas also to innovate. And I wish you all a nice end of the year, and I look forward to catching up with you soon.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you everybody for your time and your input. Phil, I'm going to ask you to explain really quickly about, once everybody else is back here, about the how do you, well, your technology to identify the provenance of the plastic. Would plastic provenance be a good term? Okay, very good. So we've got 30 seconds. It looks like the others are coming back. But Phil, yeah, if you want to.
Yeah, I would say it's not necessarily just plastic, it's material provenance, but also what Marietta was mentioning with the Tracker Plus, the event space and the whole takeaway around requesting data. So we're working on the development of a public blockchain system utilizing Ethereum, which allows organizations to both share information whilst keeping certain sensitive or proprietary data secret. But the aspect of requesting your upstream providers to send information, what we're actually trying to do is create a system end-to-end traceability where each individual actor can ask and interrogate data, be it CO2, be it where is the provenance of the material, be it fair working practices. We're also working on many textile cases, both with the City of Amsterdam and others, but they're actually also incorporating chemical traces so that they can make sure that if you are at the demand side and you are purchasing recovered material, that the material that actually gets into your banners or fixtures and fittings is actually the material you've purchased, because we are noting in certain supply chains counterfeiting of material and or substitution for lesser quality material can be a big impact. And then all of this can be connected to ESG information. So if you want to make a public statement and actually avoid the challenge of potential greenwashing, you can have an auditable trail. We're also actually working with UL and other certification bodies as well as the ISCC to really bring their digitization and prepare that certification process so that if you were an event wanting to make a statement, this bottle used to be a bottle or this sign used to be a sign, or Giles's example of this workman's wear used to be last year's sign, then you can actually prove that regardless of how complex your supply chain is.
Yeah, I think that's really fantastic. And I know all the participants in the workshop probably didn't catch all of that, but we'll share that information again. And in summary, what Phil was saying is the program that he's working on is going to be able to basically give us the proof that we need to prove the provenance of our materials through a blockchain system. So that's really fantastic.